So in the previous Ionic example, I showed you how to do a basic navigation, or showed you how the default tabbed interface application works, which has some navigation. But I realized in presenting that also kind of like uses subcomponents, and therefore is kind of maybe not the best way to fully understand kind of how navigation works. So now I'm going to do an Angular version of it, which is going to be reduced down to the most simplest way possible, and you'll see kind of hopefully I'll be able to communicate the logic of roots in it. Okay, so let's kind of create another one. So it's ng new, and I'm going to call it hyperlinking Angular. Okay, so this will create, do I want to add language routing? In this case, definitely yes. Okay, and I'm going to use CSS. And again, I'm just going to pause it while this downloads. So I've created the project. I'm now going to open the project. So I'm going to open folder, node dev, try out hyperlinking Angular. That's the one we're working on. Okay, and so here, this has got, at the moment, we're going to source. We've only got one component. We've just got app. Okay, so that's the only component. All these other component assets we'll eventually get to, okay, and environments, but at the moment we've only got the app component in it, and that's basically or as we say, this is the typical kind of bare Angular code you get at the very beginning. I'm going to delete all of that, and so now I'm going to just type in the hello world thing as we did before. And then I'm going to have something like this, page 1. Well, for now I'll just keep them in separate headers, and then so there's page 1, which we'll assume is this, and then I'll just copy those again. So we got page 2 and page 3. Okay, so I'll save that. I go to the terminal, new terminal, and then I can do ng serve, and then what we should just simply get is a page which says page 1, page 2, and page 3, I'm hoping. So let's have a look, and there we go, which is maybe still there. It is hello page 1, page 2, page 3. Okay, so what we would really want now is to create these actual components, page 1, page 2, and page 3, which by clicking on this link in the root page will actually take you into the subsequent components. Now, this is will kind of surprise you if you've never done Angular before. The way you create components in most kind of development environments will be just to create a new file, create a new class, create a new thing. In Angular and in Ionic, what typically you do is you will go to the CLI interface, the command line interface, to do that. Okay, so here I am now. I'm in the command line interface. I've got the ng server running, so it's kind of like, so I'm going to stop that for a second. I'm going to just do Control C, okay, and that will end the serving of this to the browser. And here I'm going to start now using the command line interface to create new components. Okay. And the actual syntax is ng generate C, meaning component. So Angular generate a component, and we're going to call this first component page 1. Okay, so I do that. It will basically create a similar kind of folder structure as in app. So there you see there it says app. Okay. And then it says page 1, okay. So on page 1 within it, it's got a CSS, HTML, spec TS, and TS. Page 1, okay. So let's now create another one, okay. So I'm going to do the same command and make a page called page 2. Okay, and it does it quite quickly that time. And I'm just going to do it for good measure, a third one, ng generate C, page 3. And it does all of that. It creates these things, but you'll note it. You'll see as well if you look in the app module TS. You'll see that it's actually built those components that you've just created it's actually imported it into this app module TS, which is the overall kind of, if you like, project file. Okay, so it's your page 1 component, page 2 component, page 3 component. Okay, page 1 component, page 2 component, page 3 component, and it's got these various imports here. So that's that done. Now then, the question of how do we link? Now, if you remember from the Ionic file, there is this array called roots. Okay, so we've got to somehow create this array of roots whereby we can then associate with a kind of word or with a kind of HTTP path a particular component to get loaded. Now this, all the information in Angular 7 and 8, I can't remember previous ones, you might find this slightly different in previous ones, but by the convention now is they all go into this file approutingmodule.ts. So let's click on that one here. And in here you've got this kind of default array called roots. And this is a kind of, at the moment, is an empty array. Okay. So what should be in each root is the very minimum is a path, namely a / somewhere to go, okay, and then the component that should get loaded by that. So here is our roots kind of array. So let's create ourselves a bit of space here. And you know we created page 1 and page 2 and page 3. So inside each of there you get a bit of JSON where you've got, so open a squiggly brackets, you've got an object here which has a path. Okay, so I'm going to call this first path page 1. Okay, and it should load a component as a result of that. So I now do comma component colon, and then this needs to be a component from that we've established. Now you notice, let's go back into app-module.ts, you'll see that we've got a component there called page 1 component. So I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to go back into the app routing module, and component I'm going to paste in there without any quotes, page 1 component, because this is, if you like, an object. This is not a root, which is kind of like something that needs to be written or goes to in the browser. It's a string, whereas component is an object. But the moment I've added that object, you'll notice Visual Studio Code is complaining. It doesn't like it. Why does it not like it? Because it hasn't been incorporated, it hasn't been imported. Let's go back to appmodule.ts, and you'll see there is the import statement. So I'm going to copy that, more or less. So I'm just going to copy that and I'll put that into my app routing module here. So import page 1 component, and now you'll see, notice page 1 component is fine. Okay, so let's do that with page 2 and page 3. So do oh dear, I did the wrong one there. Let's do comma, okay, and let's do the same for page 2 and page 3. So I'm going to copy that, say the path is page 2 and the component is page 2 component. Okay, you notice those commands I made before. If I look here again, generate a component called page 2. Okay, so what that does is it creates these folders, page 1, page 2, page 3, but the actual component itself is page and the number dot component dot HTML. But if I go into that, or let's go into the TS, the TypeScript file, if I click on that, you'll see that it's the class, export class page 2 component. Okay, so that's the thing that we generate by this command ng generate c page 2. That creates these 4 files in the folder page 2, but the actual class, the thing that gets loaded, is this this thing page 2 component. So it's kind of use a bit of camel case to make the thing that gets loaded. So let's go back now to my app routing module. So page 2 is page 2 component, and the path page 3 is component page 3 component. And as again, I haven't actually imported those things in yet, so I'll need to do that, and I can do that by just copying from app-module.ts. So here's app-module.ts. There's the page 2 component, page 3 component. So I'm going to now put that into the routing module here. So now now they're imported. Now Visual Studio Code is happy and it doesn't complain anymore. So I've done that now. I've created page 1 component, page 2 component, page 3 component. At this point, let's now go to our code and say, well, how are we going to turn these into hyperlinks? So having created our path, let's go back to our front page here, app-component.html. Now, at this point, you might think that by putting hyperlinks in here, you'd be changing the page. Well, what you don't, that doesn't exactly work like that. What you do is you create a thing called a router outlet, okay, at the bottom of the page, and then, or not at the bottom of the page, in the middle of the page, if you like, or making this just really a kind of tab bar at the top. And then in that router outlet will be the results of any routing that you do. Okay, well, let's just do that for a start. So here we go then, router outlet. Okay, sorry, put that wrong. It should be a lowercase o. So router outlet / router outlet. And then inside here, inside these links, well, let's replace the H2 with A. And then rather than href, we're going to put router link equals, and then this should be the name of the of one of the routes, the name feature of one of the routes in the app routing module. So there's the app routing module, and you notice there the path is page 1. So here, go back to app-component.html, router link equals page 1 lowercase. Okay, which is the actual the path of one of those routes. Okay, so I'll just do that, a router link page 1, and I'll say something like page 1. And let's do the same with the other two. So I'll just copy them in here now, for now, to make it slightly easier. Page 2, page 3. And I'll put there page 2, page 3. Okay, and then I've got the router outlet at the below that. So click Save. Now, this moment I've remembered, because in order to use the generator, I turned off the Angular serve thing. So I'm going to do that again. ng serve. Okay, and I think I've got to gradually save everything as I should have done as I was coding it. So ng serve meaning now that the browser should be open on 4200. And we'll just wait for the compilation to finish before I show you it. Okay, so it's compiled successfully. And having compiled, let's now look at what it looks like in the browser. So here it is. There's Hello World. Click on page 1. So we'll click on page 1. And it says page 1 works. Click on page 2. Page 2 works. Click on page 3. Page 3 works. And that is all the text which come from the 3 subcomponents. So let's go back into here. There's page 1. There's page 1 component.html. There's page 1 works. Okay, there's page 2 component.html. Page 2 works. Page 3 component.html. Page 3 works. So to sum up then, let's go back now here to app component.html. What I've done here, this thing here is the actual kind of navigation bar, but this router outlet will be the thing into which router link, the path pointed to by router link, will load the associated content of that path, if you like. So it's all a bit much more complicated to do when you first do it in Angular than it is in, say, just pure HTML. But what you gain by this, however, will become clear when you attempt more complex things.